The first question I want to ask you both individually is, what are your thoughts as you reflect back on everything that happened in 2020 through to 2022, even later, depending on where you are in the world? But we went through a lot of madness with the whole COVID-19 hype, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the mandates, all of it. What are your thoughts now as you reflect on it years later?
Part of the reason I got hyper involved with trying to document what was going on during the pandemic and the lockdowns through this TV series, The Fall of the Science, Lockdowns Go Viral, which you guys both participated in, was the knowing that we have a cultural norm of a type of amnesia that everybody eventually forgets everything that we went through, and we didn't typically have a way to capture it, and we seem to have this capacity to repeat history because people don't learn from the wisdom of it. It seems like 2 or 3 generations it goes away. And so I really wanted to work on this amnesia aspect of it through this project. Here we are, 4 or 5 years into it, and now all of us who are sort of active dissidents of various stripes, or active documentarians, or active pundits or voice pieces, trying to talk to what was going on, trying to kind of decode the truth from it, are seeing this amnesia sort of kick in. People are just sort of, oh, I don't really want to think about it, or I don't really recall anymore. It's this part of our cultural experience that's normal, and or just been normalized to the point that people, because it's amnesic, people forget it's happening as it's happening. So I feel like all of us are sort of watching that happen, and it can be very disheartening, I would say, because you think we've done all this hard work and it seems to be slowly disappearing, which is why I try to mitigate that in my own little way with this series. But it's interesting to watch it happen on one side, and then I'll just add, then you see, like, years later, it was a movement to push back against it, and you see the sort of rifts in the movement, the falling out amongst dissidents. It's sort of the natural progression of a movement. And so then you see, and you see sort of how wedges were driven between different groups, and groups that seem very tight are now not working with each other. There are groups that are like, oh wait, we were right, and they've been bolstered by that, and even to the point of a whole different group of scientists coming into power in the form of Jay Bhattacharya and whatnot, which we'll get into. But it's just sort of like that aspect of the amnesic aspect, and sort of like the watching the movement evolve within that amnesia has been really interesting to do, primarily because so many people, such as you two gentlemen as well, can see it happening actively. So that's what I would sort of say is where I'm at, where my vision is right now, watching that unfold.
I was on a walk this morning, and I was struck with this sort of epiphany, a mini epiphany about, I spent so much of my life, especially as an actor, you desperately want to fit in. It's an industry that's very much built in needing to be liked and accepted by the people around you. And, Zuby, as you asked your question, and Hawk, as you were speaking, I thought to myself, the revelation I had this morning, which was, I didn't realize how valuable it is to not fit in with people until 2020. It was a time where actively going against the grain and going against the quote-unquote consensus, which was completely manufactured, was actually far more valuable, and I think far more beneficial to my personal health and individual health, even though it wrecked my mental health for a really long time. It was a time where I became, and Zuby, you had a great thread, a classic thread about this on Twitter. You just learned a lot about humanity. You learned a lot about social coercion and social disintegration. You learned a lot about people's collective psychology. You learned a lot about just how willing people are to abandon their stated principles. I mean, it was funny to watch the people who've been shrieking about fascism for the past decade become the most ardent fascists, for one. And I think at the bottom of it for me, and me as the sort of sensitive artist type, I was so disturbed by just how willing people were to completely throw away everything that makes life worth meaning for an indefinite period of time, and to let, out of one side of our faces, we say that these politicians are complete imbeciles and no one should follow them. But then they spent years allowing politicians and these bureaucrats to dictate every aspect of our lives. And if you spoke out against that, if you opposed that, then you were the one who was being called insane by people who still to this day are putting masks on their children. So it was a very, very bizarre time. And Hawk, you were alluding to people who are trying to kind of forget about it. I mean, I meet people who, they don't want to relitigate the past. Or my favorite is, well, we didn't know what we know now, and hindsight is 2020. And well, we had the hindsight in 2020, and we were trying to tell you what was going on. But you called us conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers and tried to destroy our lives. And now you want to just kind of walk away from it. And that's really unfortunate. And again, another lesson, a hard lesson about humanity, unfortunately.